All right. Good morning, Sabra. It's my honor to have you join us as our PR Woman of the Month. My name is Stella Okosiboji, and I am the Programs and Membership Lead for PRWF. PRWF is a global social impact enterprise strengthening the practice, leadership, and economic relevance of public relations, and we do this by building elite communities for senior women in public relations and communications, developing globally mobile talent pipelines, and high level capacity platforms for communications and professionals through training and convening. And one of our annual convening is the Experience in Public Relations, which is in its sixth year. The Pyroman of the Month is an initiative to spotlight women in Africa and Asia that are doing great work in public relations and communications. So it is a platform whereby we speak to these women, know more about them, their expertise, their experience, and how they how they effectively work in their region to deliver results. Once again, Sarah, we're very excited to have you for as our Pyramid of the Month. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
accepting to do this with us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Sabra Saleh is a certified communication management professional and an enthusiastic global citizen. She brings nearly 2 decades of experience in strategic communication. Her journey has taken her across Africa, the Middle East, and North America, reaching out with a deep understanding of diverse cultures and communications dynamics. This global exposure has earned her top caliber communication skills, enabling her to effectively connect with and engage internal and external audiences in private, public, and non-profit sector. Throughout her career, she has provided effective communication strategies, advice, and support to management, senior executives, and government officials in internal and external communications, employee engagement, change management, corporate communications, media relation, stakeholder engagement, and crisis management. As, a, as executive director and founder of Toolkit in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Sabra uses strategic guidance and training to help organizations identify the right tools to develop the right strategies that engage people, inspire leaders, and drive growth. She's a firm believer in upholding high standards in communication practices as evidenced by academic achievements. She holds a Master's of Arts degree in Mass Communication from the University of Leicester, 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 Leicester,
Yes,
Leicester, United Kingdom, a Bachelor's of Science degree in Communications and Political Science from University of Indianapolis, USA, and an associate degree in law from the University of Nicosia in Cyprus. Our commitment to continuous learning is further demonstrated by our dedication, our certification as a communications management professional, CMP, from the Global Communication Certification Council. I must say that was a really brilliant bio, and I see that you love education a lot. You're always learning.
thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, it does seem like quite a hefty piece of work for several years, but it's different when you get to hear it from somebody else.
All right, thank you. So for our first question, we are eager to know how did you get into public relations as a career? Was it something you knew from a very young age that this is what I wanted to do, or it was something you stumbled upon?
So that's an interesting question because from my academic background, I didn't start with communication. I actually was interested in doing law. But during my course programs, it became very evident that I wasn't so sure if that's how I wanted to spend the rest of my life, in courtrooms or legal advice. So that made me switch to communications and public relations. And even at that time, I wasn't very sure what a career in PR was going to be. Because in so many regions, it was something that was just starting to pick up, especially for me, because I finished school and went to work in the Middle East. So so it's only when I was graduating I realized I did love the coursework. I enjoyed writing, and an advisor actually said with the combination of wanting to create impact and my love of writing and telling stories, communications would be the right fit for me. And of course, with work and getting into the industry, I started out at an agency. That's when I really saw that I do have a passion for communications and PR. It's always been difficult explaining to my family what exactly it is that I do, but it was a passion from the very beginning, and I haven't looked back. So it's been over 25 years now.
All right, that's great to hear, and I can imagine because every time when I even started my career, people will ask me what type of work do you do? So we'll be having a conversation, and they will just be saying something, and before you know, I'm giving my own experience. And how did you know that so fast? Are you a police? Do you do research? Do you do research? What do you even do? But if you work in PR, you know that research is your strongest suit. So even if you're in a room and they're talking about something you do not have full knowledge of, the best thing is to quickly do a research to know what's going on. So yes, many people do struggle. Okay, what do you do? And you're telling them we do stakeholder engagement, we do campaigns. They say, okay, you do event. They're thinking, oh, do you do wedding? No, no, just corporate events. So there's always like a lot of explaining to do. And seeing that public relations is not something that is really popular like marketing. So if you say you're doing marketing, everybody say, oh, okay, okay, oh, that's good. When you say you're doing public relations or communications, they're like, oh, okay, what do you do? So I can
Mm.
really understand that. And I
Yes.
love the passion because I can imagine you leaving law to do public relations. It's most definitely had to do with passion, I must say, because your parents would be wanting you to be like wear the wig, the prestige that comes with law.
Uh-huh. Yes, absolutely. And I think I was lucky because my mother always encouraged me to do what I wanted to do. However, she always reminded me that I have to be accountable for my own decisions. So, yeah, she's happy and understands what I do more now, but it was difficult telling them that, oh, I want to switch from law to PR.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Can you walk us through or share some campaigns that you've been part of? When you work in the industry, there's some campaigns that really touched your heart and you're like, wow, I would love to do this again. If you would do us the honor to share some of this campaign with us, we'll really be happy.
Yes, absolutely. I think over the years, one of the campaigns and the projects that I'm really proud of to this day had to do with a major sewer underground infrastructure renovation project for a city municipality that I worked with in Canada. And the reason why this project is really special to me because as a PR professional who's done a lot of corporate work, this was my first exposure to do actual stakeholder engagement and understanding how projects within the city really impact the residents. And in this particular project, there was a lot of engineering that was involved. It was a project that was taking a lot of years. And of course, we all know engineers are not the best communicators, and sometimes we have to dissect the language and make it simple for residents to understand. And with this particular project, because there was a gap between the engineers and the residents, and the communication that was between them, which was mainly notices on the progress of the work, there was a lot of complaints, of residents not understanding why it's taking so long. Why isn't this not done already? It's been a few years. And working on that project, being, exposed to have answers to the residents, and looking at all the communication that's being done, I think I took the role of first understanding the engineers and the work that they're doing. And once I was able to understand that, we decided to change the notices into visual images to show the residents the project's progress. So instead of them getting a notice explaining technical terms on why it's taking so long, they got updates to see that every 2 weeks, the tunnel progress was at 10%, at 15%, at 30%. So that gave them a visual image. It got them closer to the project and to the crew that was working on the project. And so it moved from the project moved from getting complaints of about 15 in a month to maybe getting two complaints in a 6 month period. So all that was done is really just getting to simplify the messaging that was shared with the residents and to get them closer to the work that was being done. And I think to this day, I really see how we change technical information to simplify it for the regular person who doesn't understand the details, and how we can actually use images and graphics to communicate something that is so complex. And I use that example to this day, especially when I speak to PR professionals in utilities and in construction, on how it's really beneficial for us to understand, talk to the engineers, understand the work, how can we simplify it to our audience and move from there.
All right, that's really great to know. Speaking the language of engineers, especially when you don't have their knowledge or the background in science. And this leads us to our next question. I know you shared that you had to communicate in the way that people would understand, not in very big languages that is vague for people not to get the messaging, so that you can appeal to the audience in this aspect, the people that were affected. So we want to know in depth, how do you collaborate with other teams or departments within your organization to align PR strategies to achieve the broader business goals?
Oh, yes. So I'm a huge believer in collaboration. And I think in any organization that I work in, I have to know everybody, every department. My first step is to talk to them, to understand their priorities, to understand their constraints, and then to basically see how I can connect what they're doing to the broader picture. Right. So that's always the first steps, because you don't want the different departments working in silos, and you also want to get them on board into the public relations goals and aims for the company so that you can achieve what you're trying to. A really good example of this is something that I've worked on during the COVID pandemic crisis is managing internal communication campaign and communication. You couldn't do it by yourself as the communication department. We had to involve health and safety. We had to involve the chief medical officer, the legal team, policy, IT. All of these departments really had to be involved in doing their part when it came to communicating and what they needed to share. But the goal was the same, right? To keep everybody on site safe, to communicate information in a timely manner. And none of that could have happened just by messages from the communication department. So that's one aspect of making sure internally that nobody's siloed. And also in another project that I've worked on was moving employees from one department to the other. So change management is also another thing that needs to be done in collaboration, because you might have the same message, right? That there's transition and change happening, but how you communicate that internally is going to be different to the public audience, who also want to know that their services are going to continue regardless of the changes that are happening. So collaboration in that sense, involve the right departments, talk to them early on, get them on board, see how you can collaborate all the efforts so that you can reach the goal at the end of the day.
All right, thank you. Collaboration is very key. You mentioned that you make it a point of duty to know every staff that you're working with. So I want to ask, just imagine you're working in a multinational with thousands of staff. How would you able to know them? Or in this case, how would you manage getting to know them?
So I first like to see how many departments are there. And I schedule appointments or I make sure I go where they are, right? So you have the office lunch rooms, you have the different areas in an office environment where you mingle with different people. But I really make an effort to introduce myself to the different departments. I might not meet them right away, but I just make them aware that, hey, I'm here, I'm in the PR department, I'd like to talk to you about what you do. And it's mainly to understand their work and how they do it. I also like to go out to the field because sometimes we work in organizations where you have a team that is remote. They never come to the office. They're on site. They're busy delivering services. They're busy doing technical work outside of the office. So I also make a point to understand them and how, and that helps me shape how we can communicate with them. Because if they're not coming into an office to write an email, right? How are we reaching them? We're sending messages to them through SMS. But also, when you work with people remotely or people who are on site, you also get the motivation of really understanding the entire scope of the work that you're doing. And when you go to them to interview them or to work on a story, you're welcomed more as someone they already know than somebody who's just reaching out because you want a piece of information. And I try to always not make it like a transaction, right? It's relationship building. I want to know all the people on site. I want to know all the people in the office so that it's a natural relationship versus, hey, I'm calling from the PR department. Do you mind sending me your bio? I'm doing a story on our on-site staff. It's a little bit less personal.
All right, that's really great. Yes, because once you build the relationship with them, it's not when you need information from them or when you need to give them information that you're making the first contact. Then, from what I hear you say, I see internal communication. But what we see a lot happening in PR communication is external communication, campaigns, um, doing projects, reaching out, or sending message, or trying to build brand loyalty. Would you say that internal communication is as popular as external communication, especially considering our continent, Africa?
Oh, internal communication is so important. I mean, I can't stress that enough. I think if we're not taking care of our employees and informing employees and sharing what the goals of the company is, um, we are not going to be able to reach the external audience with full authenticity because if we are not, for example, training our internal employees and they have a front-facing rule duty like customer service, they're not going to serve the public in the best way that they can because internally they're not supported. So before we can start spending a lot of money branding and advertising, I think that relationship has to be solid internally. And then externally should be more like a support and complement each other. Because you can have a huge PR campaign and have events, but if your staff are not happy, it's just a matter of word of mouth that can ruin your reputation. And I think organizations need to avoid that. There are some organizations that take employee communication more seriously than others. And I think we need to, as a continent, really focus on internal communication as necessity, not so much as a nice to have, right? It's not about just the annual party, everybody gets a giveaway and is sent home and we've done our part. No, it's about how are the managers communicating with them? Do they know what's happening? Do they understand the brand? Are we informing them and are we training them to understand our brand so they can talk about it with confidence? Are they getting the benefits they're supposed to be getting as we say they should have, right? Are we keeping our promises to our employees? So there's a whole bunch of factors that employers really need to pay attention to.
All right, thank you for sharing that insight. Really appreciate it. It is important that we consider the employees before we spend a lot of money for external communications. Um, During your 2 decades of practicing PR and communication, what would you say is the most challenging part of working in the industry, especially as a female professional?
It's a very, very good question. So, because I've worked in the Middle East and I've worked in North America and I've worked here in Africa, the gender balance has been different. So, in the Middle East and North America, I feel the communication and PR field is more dominated by women. And in Africa, well, at least in the countries I've traveled to for events, I feel there's more men than there are women. So that's just with my little experience. It might be different in different countries, of course. So I personally, with my career, I haven't had a challenge as a, female communications and public relations professional. But what I did face a challenge on, and that's earlier in my career, was my age. So I think we were part of the first generation of public relations professionals reaching managerial levels much earlier in our career than our parents did in the 80s and the 90s. So being young and being a PR manager for an organization would make people wonder whether or not you're credible, right? So I felt I had to work harder to prove myself that I'm actually good at what I'm doing just because of that perception that, you're so young. Can you really be a manager and are you really up to this task? So I think for me, that was a challenge more visibly than being a female in the practice.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that insight. So it's based on region and the acceptance of female. But when you entered into leadership position quite early, how were you able to manage and surpass the expectations that were in front of you?
So I'm a very, very silent worker. I will I will do my research. I will make sure I do a project in a way that can actually show the success of the work that I'm doing. And then I present that to my bosses and to the CEOs and CFOs. So, and I think one of the things that also helped me quite a bit is the relationship building of it. Earlier in my career, I did a lot of media relations and I did a lot of um, conference attendance for PR clients and organizations I worked for. So earning that trust from third parties is what actually gave me credibility within my own organizations. So when you work in an agency and then a client comes and says, "Hey, are you happy at the agency? Because I'm thinking of taking you in my organization if you're interested." So that for me added the credibility with my superiors, knowing that if you don't think I'm good enough because I'm young, well, there's other people who are interested in taking me on.
All right. And thank you for mentioning. You said you're a silent worker. Then I will be asking this: is it actually of great advantage for women to work and be silent workers? Because what we see is that a lot of women are doing the work, excellent work, but you don't see them talking about it. You don't see them building their brands. They are building great brands, great organization, but they are of this opinion too that they are silent workers. Do you think this is an advantage for women?
How you look at it, because I think you can definitely build a brand whether or not you're out there bragging about it. And that comes in different ways, right? You work with people, they respect your work, and they recommend you to other people, right? They recommend you to other programs, and that's also reputation building. I think some of us who like to do our work and just get things done and focus on the impact, maybe not so much promoting ourselves, and I'm guilty of that. I'm not active on social media as my peers are. I'm not. I get nervous if I have to go and post something, to talk about all these things that I'm doing. Maybe also because early on, a lot of public relations professionals were behind the scenes, right? Everything we did was behind the scenes. People see the brand, but they don't see the people working hard behind it. people see press conferences, but they don't see all the chaos and the speech writing and the media engagement that goes on behind it. Now we are living in an era where every professional is busy talking about the work that they're doing behind the scenes. So so I think there's a balance. There's a balance. I think there's room for those of us who continue to do our work and get noticed through word of mouth and our interactions with people. And there's room for those of us who like to be out there and sharing all the great things that we're doing. So that would be my take on it because I'm still, I'm still quite shy when it comes to sharing everything that I do on social media. I feel like I should focus on my clients. I shouldn't really focus on myself.
All right, thank you. But we also believe that it is important for women to talk about the great work they are doing because we see the men, they talk about the work that they're doing a lot more. And most leaders are of the opinion that if you do not talk about your work, very few people get to know about the great work that you're doing. So thank you for sharing that perspective because if you do great work, there are also people that will talk about you. But just imagine you're in a platform like LinkedIn and you're actively selling the great services that you're delivering, and more people are getting to see you. I think it builds more visibility for you and your business.
I'm slowly learning. I mean, I agreed to talk to you on this feature today, so and I'm greatly honored for it. So I'm slowly trying to, to try and get out there as much and as comfortably as I can.
All right, that's really great to know, and that is one of the objective of the Pyramid of the Month. We want to see more women talk about the great work that they are doing. So thank you for sharing. All right, so in your experience, how would you say public relations practice is different in Tanzania compared to other regions? Seeing that you've worked in North America and you've worked in a lot of countries like Canada, how would you say the practice of public relations is different in Tanzania compared to other regions?
So in Tanzania, I think the practice reminds me how it was in the Middle East 25 years ago. The profession in Tanzania right now is pretty young. And when I say that, it's not a bad thing. This is a great time to be in Tanzania while the profession is starting to gain momentum and gain visibility. A lot of the professionals now are engaging with their regional counterparts, are attending conferences. Tanzania is hosting public relations and communication conferences. So the drive and the passion and the eagerness to be part of the community is very high. And it's something that really gives us a lot of pride because we want to be heard, we want to be out there, and at the same time, the professionals are learning and are growing. One of the things that I focus on with my colleague and friend and fellow mentor, Lot Makuza, is the university students. We work a lot on the side, volunteering our time, going to university halls to give guest lectures. We work with lecturers and professors on how we can support the transition between academia and into the workforce. We are working on a study right now that we are hoping to finish in a couple of months to actually see, where do our interns and our graduates in public relations and communications, where do they stand? Do they have opportunities to learn and grow? Do they have opportunities for internships? Are organizations pushing for it? Are universities collaborating with organizations to create that opportunity? So we are doing all this because we want to really fill the gap and all the gaps that might be there to make sure that organizations such as my own and others out there are doing their part. They're doing their part in grooming these young professionals when they come out of university. They're giving them opportunities to learn so that we can build a generation of peer and comms professionals that are ethical, that are competent, and that are passionate about the field. So that's one of the things that's on our plate right now.
All right, that's good to know. And I also believe that most countries in Africa, public relations and communication is still developing, unlike the other really grown markets that have developed, that most big organizations see the importance of public relations in Africa and most countries in Africa, you have to sell public relations and like tell them over and over and over again that public relations is important. And the reason why Facebook, Meta, they are on the heart of everyone. The reason why iPhone, Apple are in the heart of everyone is beyond marketing. Is because they've been able to build trust and loyalty for their brand. You need to explain and explain and explain because while some professionals will say that public relations is long term and it is active, even when you stop it, the result still precedes the action. Some other business owner wants to see metrics, they want to see return on investment. So yes, we have a lot of conversations to talk about regarding public relations. And like you mentioned for the student, also talent development. What we see is that a lot of people graduate from mass communication and people that did not do mass communication, when they start working, before you know it, they move them from their own department to do communications. And if you check internal communications for some African countries, this is done by the human resource department. You see that they don't give it to public relations, they give it to human resource. Okay, they want to do something, send that email to everybody. Go on site, go and get their details. You don't see public relations doing that. But in developed countries, you see that internal relations, employee affairs is some of the JD for PR people. So I totally agree that there are a lot of evangelism that we need to do for for organizations and decision makers to know that public relations is not just any other function, it is necessary for business growth and for building brand loyalty. So thank
Yes,
you. So
yes, yeah.
okay, I thought you wanted to add something.
Yes, and I always used to say to my colleagues that as public relations professionals, we have a role of doing and teaching because people never understand what it is that we do. So we always have to educate the people that we are trying to convince on why they need to have a strategy, why they need to have, to do the research, why do they have to audit their communication. And yes, I have seen a lot on the continent. There's a misconception of what public relations really is. Someone will tell you that they MC and facilitate and moderate conferences, and to them, that's public relations. So there's, or some will be influencers online and they'll categorize themselves as public relations professionals. And so you have organizations that think a successful communication campaign is having an influencer talk about their brand online. So there is, I agree, a lot of learning and teaching that we need to do in the process.
All right, thank you. So I see that you're a very big learner from doing different degrees to actively learning, but we want to also know how do you stay updated with a dynamic profession like public relations and communication, the latest trend, the different changes? How do you stay updated?
Oh, I always have my learning goals. So whatever is new, whatever is trending, whatever I'm not sure about, I'll say, this quarter I'm going to focus on AI and communication. It's something that was not very obvious in the things that we do and the work that we do. And then another quarter I'll focus on something else. Maybe I need to brush up my skills on analytics. And to do that, I really use different modes of learning. I'll either attend webinars. When I can afford it, I'll go to conferences locally or internationally. But there's a lot of things that we can learn from just on our computers, right? There's interactions with public relations professionals on different platforms. The IABC has conferences and webinars online. So, they have a YouTube show that's Circle of Fellows, where they talk about different things. There's a podcast on that as well. So I try to use different modes based on my time, what I can do. And when I feel like I can actually take a chunk of my time to do something, I'll take a 3-day course or a 2-day course to learn something new. But I make it a goal that I have at least one or two things that I focus on every year. And I see where I want to go from there. The same way when I decided I want to be certified, I basically put an aim that I'm going to work on these things for the next 6 months to 1 year so that I can go through with my certification exam. So every year, depending on what we have and what's new, I set new goals. And I mean, again, not to expose how some of us or how old some of us are, but I started working in PR when we would send faxes for media invitations. You know, there was barely any use of email at the time. But we had to learn all of these digital technologies as we grow with our profession. Then email came into the picture, and then social media came into the picture, different varieties, different platforms. And so we really have to keep up. I mean, there is no sitting back and relaxing with only what we are comfortable with. We really have to keep up with the profession, and it's going through transformations at a speed faster than we can imagine.
All right, now thank you. And what really caught me, say you didn't want to mention how old. I can imagine how you people were sending invite through fax machine. I can imagine using typewriter to type. Technology has really made the work really easy.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And it's really coming fast. Like, and for professionals to stay relevant, they must be able to learn these things as they practice. Thank you. So our next question for you is, what advice would you give to a PR professional or practitioner who aim to lead with impact? So they are saying beyond doing the work, I want to lead with impact so that even when I'm no longer in the industry, my work can speak for me.
Oh, excellent question. So one of the things that I think a lot of PR and comms professionals are guilty of is doing the activities and the content, but without actually spending time doing the research. And, doing the research and identifying what the problem really is what's going to make professionals lead with impact. It's very important to figure out, what are we trying to solve? It might be not just a communication problem. Maybe it's an operational problem. Maybe it's a policy problem. Maybe it's a trust problem, right? So what problem exactly are we trying to solve? And with that, I think you set a foundation of doing communication that is measurable, that is targeted, that is relevant. And so the change stays, right? So we have to really check first, what exactly are we trying to solve before we put in our strategies and our plans into play. And that's, I think, the best way to lead with impact.
All right. All right. Thank you for sharing that with us. Then for our last question is, how can a middle level professional strategically transition into a more senior role? What skills would they need?
Hmm. What skills would they need? So I think there's different layers to this. And it's always good to know, first of all, a senior role, what exactly would be involved in that role in terms of decisions that have to be made, accountability, is it within your organization or are you trying to transition to another organization? So I think once you have in mind what it is that you want to do and achieve or where you want to be, then work backwards from there to see what are the skills that you would need to get to that point. I mean, for me, I think when I was in corporate, I wanted to work in management, but in international development. And one of the things that I did to get to that point was I did a master's in mass communication because I felt like I needed that academic push to be able to position me in a more senior position when I applied for those jobs. So that's just one simple example, and there's many things people can do. But most importantly, really, to be a good leader, and I've seen this with different friends and colleagues, is that you have to be a good listener and be able to take feedback from your team. Otherwise, they're not going to want to come to you early with a problem if you're not approachable. So you have to be a listener, you have to be approachable, you have to be able to be a really strong team player. Yes, you're a manager, but how are you part of the team and how are you motivating them? How are you empowering them to do the work that you need them to do? And also, another really important one for me is that you have to be willing to train others and share the knowledge so that you can work better as a unit. So I think these are the qualities that are really important when it comes to being a senior leader. And then, of course, there's things like to delegate, right? You have to be able to delegate and not micromanage your team. And that's all part again about empowering them. Trust them, teach them, make yourself approachable so that you can all focus on the bigger picture.
All right. Thank you for sharing. That's all the questions we have for you. Do you have any last words before we end the interview?
Last words. Well, I mean, it's been great talking and touching on all of these things. I think you've also sent me back in memory lane on some of the things I've done in the past that I'm particularly proud of and happy to share. I think your platform is a great channel for us to engage and to share the work that we do. And yeah, I look forward to many more conversations.
All right, thank you. We see that you've done a lot of great work, but we hope to see more of you, more of your thoughts, and more of your experience and expertise sharing with us on LinkedIn. We also take thought leadership articles on, we also publish on our website. So if you have something you want us to know regarding the industry, you can also share with us and we'll publish on our website. So we definitely hope to work with you and collaborate with you in the future. um, yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for this honor. And I hope I am doing right by all the women on the continent and around the world in our profession.
All right. I believe you definitely are. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella.
All right. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Bye bye.